What horrible thing happened to you as a kid and you didn't realize the severity of it until you got older? Not safe for work version. Before we dive into today's video, I want to take a moment to provide a content warning. In this video, we will be discussing some stories and topics that may be disturbing to some viewers. If you think that these topics might be triggering or uncomfortable for you, please consider whether you want to continue watching. Your well-being is important, and it's perfectly okay to skip this video if you feel it's necessary. I do have plenty more on my channel. I was 4 years old and my nighttime routine was always telling my mom and dad how much I loved them. One night, I couldn't find my mom to tell her goodnight. I searched everywhere in the house, backyard, etc. Finally, 4-year-old me goes out the front door, looks around and sees a person standing in the middle of a crowded street with cars zooming by and swerving around them. I started walking down the sidewalk to get a better look because I thought it was the weirdest thing. Turns out it was my mom, but what was weird is she wasn't answering to my calls. I started getting really scared because my mom was blind, and had only gone blind in the past several months. I ran back to the house and got Dad because I was too afraid to go in the street to get her. Wasn't until many years later that I realized I had witnessed my mom attempting suicide via getting hit by a car. She was severely depressed due to having gone blind at the age of 34 with 2 small kids. Makes me sad to think about sometimes. She's better now, but still unfortunately blind. I lived in the countryside in a farming town. Alongside the road my family lived on was a small concrete ditch. It was visible for about half the road and then went underground the rest of the road until it flowed out into a large canal at the end. I was a really thin and small kid. When I was about 9 or so, my sister and I and some of her friends were playing in the small ditch to cool off. My sister thought it would be interesting to see if I could fit into the pipe that led underground. So my 12-year-old sister and her friends held me by my arms and lowered me into the pipe until my hips were in. I could feel the rushing water pulling me in. I yelled at them to bring me back out. They did, and then we left. I didn't tell anyone about it for years, and when I finally did they looked horrified. So yeah, if my sister had lost her grip, would have gone underground and likely gotten stuck and drowned. Not to me, but there was a family of kids that were being severely abused by their mother and nobody did anything. As children we obviously saw adults do nothing and thought it wasn't serious. One of them ended up drinking caustic soda when he was 12 in an attempt to kill himself. Looking back I see that nobody protected those kids. Every adult failed them. Our babysitter died while she was watching us when my twin and I were 3. We had no concept of death, and tried to wake her up. She had spilled water when she fell, and I still remembered getting a dish towel to wipe it up, thinking she would be proud of how responsible I was being. I remember going to get our little toy pots and pans to bang together to make noise to wake her up. We had no idea what a heart attack was. My father urinated on my head once. I was outside and he was on the porch 2 stories up. It was dismissed as, he thought it was my mother. Like that would have somehow made it okay. Having a cluttered house, and needing to spend a few hours carrying everything from the living room into my bedroom to make the living room appropriate for guests. I would sob and beg for it not to go into my room because I knew it would never leave. And the living room would get filled again with TJ Maxx bags and garbage we don't need. Turned out a hoarded house isn't normal and it made me a pretty awful roommate to my friends in my teen years. My hoarder mom went back to England for a funeral and my father had a huge garbage bin delivered so that we could unhoard the house. We filled that bin 3 times over and we didn't even really get to cleaning as we were ensuring nothing of real value was thrown out. When my mother returned she had a complete meltdown. I still have a scar on my head from her hurling a chair at me as the police were arriving. 16 stitches and so much guilt, like 15-year-old me thought I deserved to be chaired by this gremlin. Mom took me along when she was buying drugs. Took me 30 years to realize waiting at a gas station at 6 a.m. on a Saturday wasn't a thing, and neither was driving way into the ghetto and having her friend drive around the block with us. Turns out not everyone sleeps on their laundry and goes right to bed when they get home every day either. In first grade I had to go so bad. I asked, she said lunch is in 15 minutes, wait until then. 5 minutes later I went up to her desk to ask again, everyone was doing silent work, expressed that I really can't hold it, please. She says no. I look her dead in the eyes and just start pissing my pants while giving her a look of, what did you expect? I tried to tell you. Adopted, stepdad punished me by forcing me to watch them shoot my dog. I was told he was going to do it about 10 hours beforehand and he made me dig a hole out in our pasture. Evening comes and he drags her out there, absolutely oblivious as to what is going to happen. He threatened to shoot me when I refused to go out there with him, so what could I do? I tried looking away but he told me I'd have to watch or I'd get it too. So he held his rifle up to her head and pulled the trigger once, then a second time after she hit the ground. I then spent the next hour pulling her body into the hole I had dug and buried her. She was a Great Dane, just over a year old. I was 11. Parents got the dog but then passed the responsibility of her on to me because they were too busy to take care of her. I'm 17 now but that shit still fucks me up. I got out of there a few years ago and was shocked that nobody else could relate to what I went through. In 4th grade a bunch of 6th graders, after torturing it, threw a cat from high up and it landed right in front of me and died. I was never quite the same since then and it took until early adulthood to realize certain aspects about myself are because of that event. My mom used to whoop my ass really bad whenever I did the slightest thing wrong. I was genuinely afraid of doing literally anything. As a kid I didn't like taking baths because my mom wouldn't stop telling me every time that I stank and that I was a pig, that I was reeking of cunt and that I was completely gross and unhygienic, and also because the shower was too loud for me. I thought I would drown, the sound was too overwhelming in my ears when I had to wash my hair, so I was crying really bad, telling my mom that she was going to drown me. She slapped my mouth so I could shut up and stop moving, but she slapped me so hard that my mouth was bleeding. I couldn't do anything more besides bowing down my head, crying in silence as I was internally panicking because of the sound of water, while seeing my blood flowing through the shower drain. It was so normal for me to be beaten up and also the typical, wait till we get home and you'll see, and getting beat the shit out of me for talking when I shouldn't, that it was really weird for me when I'd go to friends' houses and seeing their moms talking to them with respect and not slapping them. Huh? Her mom doesn't slap her or scream at her? Why? Is it because I'm here? My mom also slaps me in secret, so if I'm not here she will definitely slap her, yeah. My father was more gentle but they were divorced and would visit us once every couple of weeks. I would call him and he was so gentle and caring at washing my hair, like he was afraid of hurting me if he used more force, on contrary of my mom. My mom divorced my stepdad when I was around 7 and 6 weeks later she was moving into her new partner's house, up the street from our house. We had a dog that I've had since I was tiny, and her new partner had a dog, they didn't get on, so my mom left the dog in the now abandoned house alone. I remember using my pocket money and stealing money to get dog food, steal the keys and feed her. I vividly remember the smell of the house. And how much weight and fur she'd lost. This was for about 2 weeks and I was the only one who tried to help her aged 7. My dad visited and I told him and he was horrified and we took her to a rescue that day. Now when I see anything to do with a stray or abused animal I'll have a full breakdown. An assistant football coach used to bully me a lot during practice, 6th grade. One day, I looked right at him and told him to shut up. He was so offended that a child said that to him that he just decked me, full force. I lost consciousness and came to on my back staring up at the sun. I never told anyone about it and now, in my 30s, I replay this event very frequently. It causes me great anxiety. When I was like 10, I was rollerblading past a neighbor who knew my parents, and he was watering his yard. As a joke, I turned off his hose, then tried rollerblading away. He chased me down, decked me in the face to the point I wasn't fully KO'd, but I was on the ground seeing stars, too dizzy to get up. Then he brought the hose over and shoved it in my mouth. He basically waterboarded me for a bit while roughing me up more. I never told anyone. I remember hearing about him coming over to the house after that one time, and I hid in my closet the entire time he was there. Kept hearing my parents call my name, and then concluding that I must be out playing with my little brother who was outside with some friends. When I was a toddler, we lived in rural Texas. My mom put me down for a nap in my crib one afternoon, and went to take a nap herself. Apparently she told my older brothers to keep an eye on me, and since they thought I was asleep in my crib, they all put a movie on in the living room. I couldn't sleep, and somehow got the idea in my head that I wanted to go get the mail. I walked past my brothers watching their movie and right out the front door, and then walked about 100 yards down our gravel driveway to our mailbox on the edge of a county road. Just about everyone had outdoor dogs in the area, and let them roam freely. Some were friendly, and many were not. There was a particularly giant Weimaraner named Buckwheat that belonged to a neighbor who met me about halfway down my driveway to walk with me. Apparently when I got to the county road where our mailbox was, he got on the street side of me and stood and blocked me to the curb as several cars/farm trucks whizzed past. A man returning from work saw me out there by myself with a huge dog and pulled over. He said when he got close, the dog got defensive and started pushing me away from the road again as his car approached. The man pulled up and asked me where I lived, and offered to give me a ride home. I didn't know not to get in the car with strangers, but thankfully in this case it was a good guy. He knocked on the door of my house and woke my mom up from her nap. Told her that he had found me barefoot in the road, where I had a dog guardian angel that was actively protecting me from traffic, and it was thanks to that dog that I was still alive. Here's to you, Buckwheat. Hey! We're halfway through the video, thanks for watching. 96% of the people watching my videos are currently unsubscribed to my channel. You would help me out a lot. Thanks. Let's move on to the rest of the video. In elementary school, I won first place in a Halloween costume contest. Finally, all those kids who teased me for looking like a girl would see that I was awesome. My parents helped me make my Cat in the Hat costume for like a week. Just recently saw pictures, wicked cute. School principal called me up on stage and announced, as the first place winner, I got to choose any of the prizes from the girls' table. I had won best costume for the girls as a 7-year-old boy who was already teased for being girly. From this day forward, teasing turned to beatings. The moment of looking out at all of the whole school, as well as the parents, mine, too, and more, and thinking, see, I'm a winner, as they all laughed at my confusion has caused damage I'm still undoing 40 years later. As a little kid learning how to swim in YMCA, didn't know it was wrong for old naked men touching/stroking their dicks, smiling and gesturing at me while showering before and after getting into the pool. My mom would be waiting outside for me and never thought much of it until later after I learned about different types of sexual abuse. Brooklyn, New York City, 1981. My parents had an argument in the kitchen. My mom had been drinking and for some reason decides to open the drawer and pull out 2 massive knives and bangs them on the kitchen counter to prove her point. My dad reckoned she lunged at him. Whatever it was, my dad lost his shit and fucked her up. 5-year-old me at the just froze in the living room chair. He went to jail, she went to hospital, I went to the neighbors. When I was 7 years old I was outside playing with my friends. An older boy who was a bully in the neighborhood walked by and started saying racist things to them. The boy and I are white and my friends are black. I didn't understand what he was saying was racist, and to be honest at the time I didn't even fully understand the concept of race. I didn't think of my friends as any different from me. I did know that he was making them upset, so I told him to leave them alone. He called me a wannabe and a lover. I had never heard the N-word before, but I knew I was being insulted. There happened to be a big stick lying next to me on the ground, so I picked it up and whacked him across the face with it. He started crying and ran to his house. I went back to playing with my friends like it was nothing. About 20 minutes later the boys came back with his uncle. The uncle called me over and told me I needed to be put in my place. He then made me stand there while the boy slapped me across my face. He told him to do it harder again and again. The uncle was really angry that I wasn't crying. I really wanted to, because it did hurt, but was always told to never cry in front of the person who made you cry. Anyway, I'm not sure how long this went on for. At some point the boy started asking his uncle if he could stop. The uncle said fine and told me that if I had more white friends I would become a nicer girl that knew how to act. I never told anyone and kind of felt like maybe I deserved it for hitting the boy with a stick. And it wasn't until I was much older that I understood everything that happened. Starting to eat LSD at 13 at the encouragement from my father because it was cool and made everything look like cartoons. In retrospect, it's mind-boggling and so absurd to convince a child to do that insane of a drug. I'm grateful for my experiences and I think I have some unique perspectives thanks to the copious amounts of hallucinogens I ate 13 to 16. But I would absolutely never in a million years encourage my 2 children to do that. It hurts my heart. I was 7 and playing in a park near our house. I remember I was building something in the sandbox when this lady with tears in her eyes and a big smile sat down next to me. She asked me questions like, "What are you doing? Are you here alone?" She was very nice and her occasional tears made me feel sad for her. Her husband sat on a bench a few feet away and I remember after a while she asked me if I wanted some Coca-Cola. She and her husband took me to their house, a few streets down the road, and I remember sitting in their kitchen drinking my cola. She was sitting there watching me drink until the husband suddenly got mad and asked me to leave. I remember him telling her, "He is gone. We can't replace him." When I was 10, I had to travel and stay with my hockey coaches for a tournament. My parents had to work/travel that weekend, so they weren't available. The motel we stayed in didn't have extra cots, so I ended up sleeping in the bed with one of my coaches. They weren't watching a porno on the TV, but I remember there was a lot of nudity. Not appropriate for my age, for sure. Something must have felt off, because I ended up sleeping in the closet both nights. Nothing happened, but it really shows how young athletes can end up in situations where they are extremely vulnerable to sexual abuse/assault. When my younger sister and I were very little, this man came to paint our house. He was there almost every day over a certain period of time, if my 8-year-old mind remembers correctly. He was in his 60s or 70s, and we, my sister and I, thought he was a very nice man because he would give us candy. I remember looking forward to seeing him because of that. He would also invite us to sit on his lap when our parents weren't around. One day my sister and I were sitting in the living room, which had a transparent screen door leading onto the patio. The painter was supposed to be working in the patio, but my mum, from another window in the house, caught him masturbating to us when he thought nobody was looking. The man left quickly. My mum immediately called the police, and I remember my mum and I both having to give a statement later on, but they couldn't do anything because they had no proof. When I was little I wouldn't eat. I had a very low appetite and was underweight. My mother would hold my face and put the food in forcefully and I'd cry and cry about it. I would take an hour to finish a meal and my mother would slap me and hit me and once she locked me in the storage room which was pitch black. Now I have a rocky relationship with food. One time, my family went to a city that's by the seaside. The weather here is sunny 8 months a year, so naturally this city is almost always full of tourists. It was also known for its old architecture and many locally known artists, so a lot of small private museums. statues and fountains everywhere. The area we choose to rest from the heat was open and buzzing with people. My parents wanted to explore more, but me and my sister, being the unmotivated, edgy, and cool teenagers, opted to stay sitting on the bench, since it was all too tiring and boring for us. We agreed that we would stay here and my parents would meet us sometime later. We were talking about nothing in particular, when an older man, he was 50 or even older, sat on the other end of the bench, asking if it was okay. We just shrugged. We didn't care, as long as he wasn't bothering us. He then started talking to us in English since we looked nothing like the locals. Our skin, hair and eyes are very light-colored, something that's uncommon here. He started with small talk, complaining about the hot weather and such, and then asked all kinds of personal questions, like what was our favorite subject in school, did we have any pets, what were our hobbies, etc. He stated that we must dance and sing, since we were so beautiful. What the fuck? I was 14 at that time. My sister was 13 and we both still looked like kids at that age. Anyways, the subject of hobbies continued and we told him that we more into sports, outdoor activities and drawing. With every passing question, we were more and more reluctant to answer, but still did, as we thought it would be rude not answer. We were raised well. It was obvious that we weren't very engaged in the conversation. Some time later, he asked if we were alone. We replied that our parents are somewhere around here. He then remembered that we liked drawing and said that he was an artist and had a studio not far from where we were sitting. He could take us there and show us his work. We declined, stating that our parents will be back soon and they wouldn't be able to find us if we went. He kept insisting, and just when we got up to leave, we saw our parents walking around the corner. We pointed to them, and said, "There they are." He said that it was fun talking to us, stood up and went to a different direction. We hurried to our parents and said nothing to them about what happened, mainly because at that time, we didn't really comprehend the fact that this strange man was trying to lure two children to God knows where. We just thought that he was annoying, and that's it. Only now I understand that something very wrong could have happened if our parents didn't come from around the corner at that moment, or if we agreed to go with him, because it was impolite to decline an offer from an adult. We were taught what stranger danger was, but this man was so smooth and subtle about the whole deal that we didn't feel in any danger. He was well groomed, wore clean clothes and acted normally. Nothing was off about him, so we didn't have any reason to worry or be wary. We've reached the end of the video once again. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to get notified whenever my next video drops, make sure to subscribe. I'm posting once or twice a week. Also let me know your thoughts on the stories. Until next time.